Welcome back. It's been a while, but we're back at it again with another boys video, and today's video is going to cover a character who's undergone some pretty drastic changes from the comics to the television show, the insanely powerful Stormfront. But before we go any further, similar to last season, we're going to be giving away a few copies of The Boys Volume 1, and in order to win, all you have to do is be a subscriber and follow both Key Issues members on Twitter, myself and Garrick, and that info is pinned in the comments section below. But now back to our video on Stormfront. Now, before we go any farther, yes, you're going to notice one shocking difference between Stormfront in the comics and Stormfront in the show, but honestly, who cares? It's not like Stormfront was ever anybody's favorite character, and if he was, get some help. So obviously Stormfront is a female in the show where she is a male in the comics, and why was the character gender swapped? The showrunner states, "We wanted to sort of create Homelander's worst nightmare, and his worst nightmare would be a strong woman who wasn't afraid of him and proceeded to steal his spotlight." And this plays really well in for the character of Stormfront because it allows for there to be an interesting dynamic between Stormfront and the megalomaniac/narcissist Homelander. Stormfront made his comic book debut in The Boys number 7, but he only appears in one panel and has no dialogue. And if I'm being honest, he really didn't make his first true appearance until much later in the series in issue number 31. In this arc, called Self-Preservation Society, the superhero team Payback is commissioned by Vought to capture the boys. Stormfront is the leader of Payback and is widely considered to be the second most powerful superhero in the world behind Homelander. In fact, considering the fact that Homelander is a test tube baby, you might be wondering where the DNA came from that was used to create him. Well, if you guessed Stormfront, you'd be correct. Homelander is a biologically engineered version of Stormfront. The entire team of Payback is meant to mimic the Avengers, and Stormfront is an obvious homage to Thor, except wretched in every single way. However, in terms of who he is and who he's supposed to remind you of, it's the God of Thunder. And honestly, while Homelander is a complete and utter psychopath, I would still take Homelander any day of the week over Stormfront for one massive reason. Stormfront is a f***ing Nazi. He's a literal, cold-hearted, racist, Jew-hating Nazi Superman. He is, without a doubt, one of the worst superheroes in the entire comic book series. As I mentioned before, Stormfront is the leader of Payback, and he rules that team with an iron grip. He's drastically more powerful than the rest of the group, so his dynamic within the team is very similar to how Homelander keeps the rest of the Seven in line. His backstory for the public is that he is a reincarnated Viking god, complete with lightning abilities and weather control. However, like most of the superheroes in the world, his abilities have been drastically oversold to the public. He absolutely, positively cannot control the weather, but he can use lightning blasts which make him extremely dangerous. Additionally, he can fly, and he's extremely durable, albeit far less durable than Homelander. He also has super strength, speed, and agility. His true backstory, though, is far less whimsical and far more rooted in Nazi science. Stormfront was created through a byproduct of Nazi science, and he's one of the first humans to have Compound V used on them. Stormfront was given the drug as a child in utero, and the result of this experimentation created the first true super soldier, albeit for the German side. Stormfront's mother is unknown, but it's believed that she was killed by a Nazi after her son was born. Ultimately, Hitler came to be disgusted by the child, believing he was an abomination who needed to be destroyed. However, scientists for the German side were able to sneak him out of the country and to America as a young boy, but being raised in Nazi Germany, Stormfront was still ingrained with a deep hatred for basically everybody. I mean, you know how Nazis are, there's no real big shock there. However, when we flash forward to modern times, Stormfront, like the majority of the rest of the heroes, carries out missions at the beck and call of the Vought Corporation. Throughout the events of the story, Payback is commissioned by Vought to hunt down and capture the members of the boys, due to the fact that the Seven and the boys have a ceasefire, and we've kind of discussed this in a ton of other videos if you want to go and check those out. Stormfront's major contribution to the overall narrative is that he was able to ambush and badly beat the female of the species in one-on-one combat. Stormfront was drastically more powerful than the female, but unlike Homelander, he's not nearly as invulnerable. The female was able to claw out his eyes with her razor claws, and the ensuing rage from Stormfront resulted in him beating her into a coma. However, Stormfront did leave her alive as an act of provocation. The goal was to smoke out the rest of the boys' members so that the superhero team Payback could capture them. The resulting showdown between the remaining members of the boys in Payback was fairly one-sided. When the boys arrived at the hospital to check on the female, they were ambushed by Payback. The resulting battle was fairly brutal. Billy started by killing the Crimson Countess and throwing glass into Stormfront's eyes, which caused him to fly away writhing in agony. Then Billy managed to stalk, isolate, and kill the remaining members of Payback one by one. While Billy was stalking and killing the members of Payback, Frenchie, and Huey were able to hijack an ambulance and leave the scene with the female. The only member of Payback to survive the encounter was Stormfront, who left in the beginning after having glass thrown in his eyes. The boys regrouped and were able to hunt down Stormfront at the headquarters of Payback. Stormfront arrived and faced off against the entire team, but frankly, he was no match for their savagery. Stormfront probably could have won if it wasn't for the fact that he was told to bring the boys in alive, but his initial hesitance to kill ended up with him essentially being jumped and overwhelmed. Billy, Huey, Frenchie, and a Russian hero named Love Sausage with an axe to grind for the Nazi ended up beating Stormfront to death with a combination of baseball bats, kicks, and finally caving his head in. And that is about it in terms of Stormfront's heroic legacy in the comics. The only other element of his history that I didn't cover was the fact that he also had a brief relationship with Queen Maeve, but the character of Queen Maeve is very different in the comics than in the show, so I severely doubt there will be any relationship between the two of them in the show. Stormfront was a gigantic piece of shit, and personally, I think he's one of the most wretched characters in the boys, but what can I say? I don't like Nazis. And that is about it for this video. I hope you learned a lot about Stormfront, and if you did, feel free to drop a like on this video. It takes 2 seconds and it really helps out the channel and the video. Thanks again for watching. This has been Nick with Key Issues, and you know the motto, Stormfront over everything.